I'm here with Assemblywoman Bonnie Watson Coleman. She's the Democratic Majority Leader in the Assembly, which makes her one of the most powerful lawmakers in the state, and she's also a Ewing resident and a native of Ewing. So thank you for joining me this morning.
Glad to be here. Glad to have you.
A perennial topic for Ewing is the amount of money given to Ewing from the state in lieu of taxes. Many Ewing residents feel that the state should give the township more money to help with its finances because of the large amount of land owned by the state in Ewing. Do you think that it's ever going to be possible for the state to increase its amount of money given to Ewing?
Well, the question of whether or not the state is giving a fair amount back for property that is not taxable in municipalities is a question that not only impacts Ewing, but it impacts other places like Trenton and Newark, and wherever there are substantial amounts of state-owned buildings or state-run buildings. Trenton, a couple of years ago, did an assessment of the value of its property in relation to the percentage of reimbursement from the state. And as a result of that study, it did get an increase in its appropriation from the state. Ewing is embarking on something very similar. Most recently, I went to the Department of Community Affairs with Councilman Bert Steinman, who is the president of the Township Council, to discuss the implications of the pilot in Ewing and whether or not we could experience any kind of an increase. Everybody knows right now that the state budget is very, very tight, and the state is cutting back on spending and is reducing. The governor's proposed to reduce spending even beyond the budget for the current fiscal year, for next year. So this isn't really the environment in which we're going to get more money from the state, I don't think. But I think it's something that we need to work on, and that perhaps over the next couple of years we can present our case in such a way that we can convince the state that a greater percentage of the value of the property, if it were taxed, should be reimbursed to the township. I've met with the mayor about it. I've met with other council members, particularly Bert Steinman, and they know that I'm committed to working with them on behalf of Ewing.
You mentioned the state budget. What do you think of Governor Corzine's proposed budget cuts?
I think that the budget cuts are very serious. I believe that they're a reflection of what we're hearing around the state from the taxpayers across the state, and that is state government, stop spending, stop spending, stop spending. Even though 75 to 80% of our budget is a pass-through, it goes to municipalities and schools and nonprofits and other entities, people still want us to get a handle on our spending. And I believe that the proposal that the governor made in his budget address recognizes that. And they're very serious and very deep cuts that are being proposed. We're analyzing those cuts. We don't actually have the budget document yet. We'll probably have it in the next 10 days or so, at which time both the Senate and the Assembly will be engaged in public hearings and then department hearings on the implications of the budget on various constituencies. But I think that we really do have to listen, pay attention to what our taxpayers are saying, and recognize that we can't continue to spend. We have got to find a way to cut spending to the extent that we can without doing it on the backs of very vulnerable people, our senior citizens, our poor people, our children.
Do you have any ideas for areas that could be cut without impacting those groups of people?
Well, I know that a couple of proposals have to do with the elimination of departments. And I think that we need to look very carefully at what we can save by doing that. We need to look at how we can eliminate perhaps some archaic functions that are taking place in other departments. Bureaucracies have a tendency to perpetuate themselves after a while. We need to really examine department by department to see what kind of functions can be consolidated, what kind of functions need to be eliminated, who can do something better. And we really are looking at those questions and those issues now, and we're going to continue to do that. I think that there are greater savings to be had there. Last year, the Assembly majority proposed several $100 million worth of cuts in administrative spending and things like that in the budget, and a great number of them were accepted. We had more on the table at the time. They weren't accepted then, but we will be revisiting some of them.
There are a great many proposed bills in the Assembly now with your name on them as sponsor. I'd like to go over a few of those new laws with you right now. First, you proposed an increase in penalties for witness tampering and witness intimidation. Could you explain why that law is needed and what it's going to do?
Well, you know, one of the issues that we're having now is the impact of gang-related crime in our communities. And our witnesses have been reluctant to participate in eliminating and calling into account some of that behavior that takes place. And when they do, there are issues of intimidation of the witness. That's a very serious situation that we need to get a handle on. We need to increase the penalties for tampering or intimidating our witnesses, because we need citizens to participate in the justice system. We need them to stand up, to feel confident that they can speak out on that which they find to be illegal activities happening in their community without fear of retribution.
Mm-hmm. On the other hand, you proposed a law that would reduce the size of drug-free school zones around schools to 200 feet from 1,000 feet.
Well, if you look at some of the studies that are being done nationally about the incarceration rate in the various states, they're finding that a lot of people are there because of drug-related crimes that propose no violence to the community. In urban areas, in particular, there's not very much distance between one school or another school. There's no relationship between the expanded zones and crime, the reduction or the occurrence of drug-related crime in those areas. So we need to look very carefully at what are the implications of some of the decisions that were made, such as the drug-free zones. And we need to look at who we're incarcerating and who and what kinds of crimes are being committed, that those offenders can be diverted from prison into other programs. We can't continue to sustain this kind of Department of Corrections budget. We're just building bricks and mortar, bigger prisons, and then we're releasing people out into the communities. Those who we can save from going into the system, we need to do that. They need to be working, they need to be productive citizens, but they need to be held accountable. I believe that the reduction of the school zones and the drug-free school zones in the urban areas in particular will give the law enforcement more flexibility in dealing with issues that occur there. And I don't think that it has anything to do with the escalation or the decrease in crime.
On the economic front, you propose an increase in the minimum wage. Why do we need an increase in the minimum wage?
Because workers don't need minimum wage. They need livable wage. And it is very expensive to live in the state of New Jersey. We need to look at how we value different type of work that is being done. We need to ensure that people are making the kind of wages that recognize their ability to raise their families, to support their families, to live in communities, to be able to rent apartments or buy homes. The minimum wage is not our goal anymore. It should be a livable wage. And so I believe that there should be indexing of the increase in the wage to the inflation rates.
I can see some small businesses being opposed to that plan. Have you heard opposition?
Well, I haven't heard any specific opposition, but that bill hasn't been moving right now. It's something that we've introduced, and some of the bills that we introduce, we have to be careful in the timing that we bring them forth.
Another law that you proposed would allow automatic speed traffic cameras on certain local streets. Do you think that people want automated speed cameras giving out tickets?
I think it's a balance between more effectively using technology to free up our police patrols. I think that speeding is a very serious issue, and that while people may be concerned to some degree about this so-called technology overseeing cameras everywhere, kind of Big Brother watching, that in a balanced environment it could be very helpful.
Have any specific police departments come to you asking for the authority to put up speed cameras?
No, but we've talked to just sort of law enforcement in general. We've talked to other interested parties about things like that.